Good morning, everyone. Are you ready? All right. Today we're coming together for a number of, I believe, important announcements. Earlier this week, we learned that finally all the fires within our community have been extinguished. Well before the last flames were put out, this team has been working diligently, not only to set the process in motion for the recovery, the rebuilding, the reconstruction, but also to create opportunities for significant enhancements to tools that should be available not only to us but to our entire community to better anticipate, predict, manage, and then respond and rebuild when facing crises like the ones we recently faced. It is very clear to us that what has happened here recently, specific to these firestorms, and they are firestorms, they were firestorms, or the recent tropical storm near hurricane, these are not the one and done scenarios. We believe that these will recur. These will be events that will happen again because of significant climate changes that we are all facing. So shame on us if we did not take the appropriate steps and measures to prepare for those types of events. Today's remarks will focus on a number of different areas. Number one, the safety net for employees and families that we have created. We want to remind individuals of what we have done, but also add to that. Secondly, the ongoing support to impacted schools as a result of these fires. In addition to that, resiliency enhancements projected to take place within our school system to ensure that our facilities, our assets, are as ready as they could possibly be for the eventuality of future fires or what we know will be conditions that will impact our schools as a result of climate change. We paid considerable attention, as we should have, obviously, to the devastation brought about by these fires, particularly in the Altadena community and in Palisades. But let's not forget that some of the most polluted areas in our community were far away from those fires. And the conditions experienced by individuals close to those fires are similar to conditions experienced by students and families every single day in many schools across our community. Particularly those areas, those communities and schools located around the 710. That is an everyday threat that we need to address. So resiliency enhancements shall compose part of the announcement today. In addition to that, I want to chime in a little bit. We heard the president during his visit to Los Angeles. We've heard the governor during his visit to our schools, as well as every single local, state, and federal official, speaking eloquently and with urgency about the need to cut through the red tape, cut bureaucracy, expedite the process of recovery. We're going to hold them to it. And part of our announcement is contingent on them delivering on those flexibilities, those waivers, the cutting of the red tape for us to normalize conditions for our students, for our workforce, and the communities we serve. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit about immigration, attendance, and achievement. So it's a full agenda, but I promise you we'll be reasonably quick covering it. I want to introduce some individuals you will be hearing from as well. We have with us the president of the School Board of Los Angeles Unified, Mr. Scott Schmerlson. We have school board member Nick Melvoin. We have school board member Shirlette Newbill. And I believe that those are the board members that have joined us thus far. We have representatives of other board members with us here today as well. Let me begin with what we have done as part of the recovery and stabilization post-event. Number one, After surveying staff and collaborating with labor entities, we know there have been about 340 of our employees who had to be relocated as a result of these fire storms. About 100 lost their homes. As a result of that impact, we sprung into action and made 7 days of paid time off for those who were relocated and 10 days of paid time off for those who lost their homes. In addition to that, we made grants available to those individuals, $500 for those who were relocated and $1,000 for those who had lost their homes. We are increasing those grants because the dire need has not subsided. So as of today, via application, we are extending the grants for relocated employees from $500 per employee, not per household. We know that in many instances you have more than one employee residing in the same household. $500 to $1,000 per employee. And for those who lost their homes, we are making available to them grants up to $5,000 per employee. We believe that beyond that commitment, we may actually go higher. These funds are provided through an independent foundation that was recently recreated for the benefit of our workforce, our students, and our community. It is the right thing to do at the right time for absolutely the right reasons. We have also engaged with a number of colleges and universities, and a number of them have joined us in making commitments to 11 and 12 graders who resided in the impacted areas, particularly Altadena and the Palisades, granting them direct access, direct acceptance to their university. ASU was the first university to make that offer and commitment. We are in conversations with other entities, including UCLA and USC. That, too, is the right action at the right time. I've heard directly from some students who are concerned about their performance on an SAT in light of what they've gone through. They have no home. They lost their school. That should be the least of their concerns. In addition to that, I want to be very clear. During times of crisis, we ought to minimize the impact on those who are closest to us. Even though financial conditions across the state, and certainly Los Angeles, are not favorable, even though the state is still reeling from a massive deficit position, and school districts across the state of California have already announced RIFs, reductions in force, we are committing and announcing today a moratorium on all staff reduction in force RIFs for 1 year. In addition to that, to minimize disruptions as much as possible. And look, we've seen some necessary consolidations. Marquez and Palisades Elementary are examples of that, so there's always the possibility of that, but the wholesale closure of schools will not happen as well for an entire year. Right thing at the right time for the right reasons. I want to speak a little bit about the support to impacted schools. Number one, we are joined here today by Pamela McGee, who's the principal of Palisades Charter High School. And I want to be very clear about the fact that in light of this crisis, there is no separation in terms of intent, compassion, and action for students and workforce, whether they are charter or non-charter. And we are committed to ensuring that the Palisades elementary schools that were impacted or destroyed alongside Palisades High receive the right level of support, the right level of funding for the short-term and long-term accommodation of their students and workforce. So, we have offered at no cost leased space in district locations, particularly for Pali High School, including some space at Uni Charter and Revere Middle School. We've also, as you know, accommodated Pali Elementary and Marquez Elementary into nearby schools, and the transition has been extremely smooth with the entire student population workforce moving as a unit. We are continuing to conduct, and this is appropriate, ongoing environmental studies and assessments, site assessments at two schools that were deeply impacted not by the fire but by smoke. Talking about specifically Canyon and Paul Revere Middle School. We believe by next week we will have in hand some of the results of those site assessments. We're very optimistic. We've gone above and beyond in terms of preparation for the return of the students to those schools, as well as schools across all entities within Los Angeles Unified. But these were schools where the community expressed some additional concern. So in an abundance of caution, we commissioned additional site assessments that include soil assessment, air quality assessments, to provide the community the reassurances the community deserves. Ongoing action is happening as we speak. In fact, just before I arrived here, in an effort to expedite debris removal, I was informed that EPA is currently on site at the 3 schools in the Palisades conducting hazardous inspection and removal. That is the very first step in the removal of the debris. I had recent conversations over the weekend with the governor and his staff to push for an expedited process for the removal of the debris, utilizing the Army Corps of Engineers, but also expedited reaction to the necessary work that will lead to the rebuilding on these sites. I want to talk a little bit about the investments we are prepared to make. Number one, we are thankful to our voters for recently they approved a massive $9 billion bond referendum. And it was a good and timely thing because we absolutely need those resources. Today we are announcing up to $725 million allocated for the rebuilding of the 3 impacted schools by the fires in the Palisades. That's Palisades High, which by most accounts, 30% of its facilities were burned and they are not usable. Secondly, Marquez and Palisades Elementary, 1 completely destroyed, 1, all of the bungalows destroyed, only the legacy building stands. We want to do this quickly, and we believe that we can shave an entire year of engineering, architectural work, and the actual building if the state and the federal government meet us where we need to be in terms of cutting through the red tape and expediting the process of approval. We're going to hold them to it. They made that promise. If we are able to do phase 0 by May of this year, and that includes the removal of the debris, the inspection of soil conditions, site assessments, if we're able to do that by May of this year, we believe we can deliver at least 2 of the 3 schools, but possibly all 3 schools for the beginning of the 2029 school year. Otherwise, 2028 school year. That's a year shorter than what ordinarily would take to build these schools. We also believe that if in fact phase 0 can be done by May, meaning the removal of the debris, we will be able to deploy based on environmental testing of the soil, air conditions, exhausting all of the environmental concerns. If we're able to complete phase 0 by May, remove the debris through an expedited process in partnership with the state and the federal government, we may be able to open all 3 sites, or maybe just 2 sites, including Pali High, for next school year, meaning the 25-26 school year, with the deployment of portable classrooms on site. We have the capacity to do this, we can do this, but we need the partnership of the state and federal entities. This is, as I said, up to $725 million cost estimate for the full replacement of these three entities. I want to speak a little bit about additional investments specific to resiliency enhancements, whether needed as a result of the fires or other environmental conditions. Climate change is a reality. We ought to accelerate our preparation for it. Therefore, we are committing an additional $550 million into natural disaster resilience investments in Los Angeles Unified this year. We're talking about critical infrastructure, upgrades to strengthen our facilities against climate impacts and natural disasters. Specific to better roofing. When we were in the Palisades, we saw one area of Marquez Elementary, where every single portable classroom around this area completely burned to the ground. But 3 bungalows survived. They weren't even singed. Different era, different code, metal roofs. We cannot wait. We need to accelerate these projects to ensure that our facilities are resilient to what no doubt will be atmospheric conditions, fires that will threaten our school system and our community. This includes a massive $250 million investment into HVAC systems, a $200 million investment into seismic retrofitting, a $45 million investment this year into roofing upgrades, air purifiers in every single classroom, new outdoor sensors for air quality, particulate matter, but also being able to detect wind, speed, and direction, which currently they do not. We have air sensors over 200 schools. We're going to dramatically expand the radius of coverage that the air sensors with the additional meteorological features will allow us to better prepare, better predict, better manage during the event, and better respond. It's been now well documented that the community's air quality indices and response systems need to be improved. We are at the mercy of those systems. We are not waiting. We will be partnering with city and county entities to develop better protocols for emergency notification, emergency response, and decisions on partial or total evacuation or shutdown of schools. But we need the better sensors to make those decisions. We noticed over the past weeks, faraway areas from where the fires were burning had the highest concentration of smoke, dust, and ash. And the air sensors were giving us information that did not reveal that condition. That will change. We will reach 100% coverage of all areas within our jurisdiction and ensure that the level of collaboration with city and county officials will be at a level never before seen. It's not just about technology or repairs to our schools, new roofs, or HVAC systems. Resilience also must be addressed through the environment within our schools. And that is why we're committing, as of today, a $700 million investment this year into greening and shading projects this year, all thanks to Measure US. And we'll be bringing to the board next week a massive $122 million recommendation to expand solar energy systems in our school system. In total, this is a $2.2 billion investment to be realized this year. It is the right investment at the right time for absolutely the right reasons. We cannot wait. I talked a little bit about the collaboration efforts with the city, with the county, but we certainly want to ensure, and I'm going to say it for the third time, that state and federal entities meet us where they need to meet us to accelerate and expedite this work. The nonsense of red tape and bureaucratic processes needs to be dismantled. We're getting good feedback, including calls being answered on the weekend from the governor's office and his team, with assurances that, in fact, they will reduce the burden associated with the process of building or rebuilding. And we are appreciative to our state and federal partners. We will rely on FEMA reimbursements. Most of these investments are FEMA reimbursable. We want to work with members of Congress and the administration to ensure that all of the dollars we're spending will be reimbursed not years down the road, but in an expedited format. What happened in North Carolina recently, what happened in Southern California recently, need to be responded with the same level of urgency and expedited process. And we are confident that that will happen. I want to speak now about immigration and attendance. Yesterday was an important day in our community, the Day of the Immigrant. Many of us experienced it through the absence of the immigrant worker. I can tell you that the cafeteria in this building shut down because the workforce was not here. There is fear, there is concern, and we understand it. That concern is being translated into the lives and the existence of students in our schools. And today we know that there are a number of walkouts happening as we speak, particularly in high schools in the east and southeast part of our jurisdiction. We understand the frustration, the fear. We understand the concern that students and families feel. We stand by our values. This board has affirmed and reaffirmed the fact that our schools are safe places. We are collaborating with State Attorney Bonta. We are collaborating with city and county entities. We are collaborating with community-based organizations to ensure that our schools continue to be safe spaces. Our staffs have been trained. Parents have been empowered with information specific to the rights they possess. We will not waver from our commitment of protection to our students and our workforce. And I speak about workforce because roughly 350 of our workforce members are currently employed because they are beneficiaries of temporary protection status. They are part of our family. We will fight for their rights. We will protect their rights every single day. But yesterday, we did notice a significant impact to our daily attendance. Registering at 10 o'clock in the morning and throughout the rest of the day at 20% attendance level lower than a typical Monday. We will continue to monitor attendance this week and days and weeks to come. I'm asking parents, please send your children to school. Schools are safe. If you feel that you are at risk, empower someone else in your family or a neighbor. Include that person in the contact card for the school so that person has the authority to drop off the child and pick up the child. But depriving children of their education by keeping them home, away from school, does not help anyone. We are here to support you. All of our campuses are safe zones. We have resource centers within the schools. We have resources available to parents, and we can refer parents to community-based organizations for all types of resources, including legal assistance at no cost in many instances. Lastly, I open on a good note, a massive multi-billion-dollar investment into our community, which will not only prepare us better for the future, but will actually stimulate the local economy. I want to end also on a positive note. Just yesterday, we informed the board that pursuant to the release of the Smarter Balanced data, particularly in reading and math, taking into account graduation rates, we once again reached a historic moment in Los Angeles Unified. The number of state-identified low-performing schools was reduced by 72% this year compared to last year. We beat the state. The state reduced the number of schools facing that low-performing level by 60%. We beat them by 12%. I am proud of the work that this system does. I'm proud of the work of our teachers, our educators, our leaders, our support personnel, the vision and support of this board, this entire executive team, our students, and our parents. So with that said, let me introduce the president of our school board for some remarks, Mr. Scott Schmerlson. After our board members speak, I'll come back and do some remarks in Spanish.
Thank you so much. You know, the more I was listening to Mr. Carvalho speak about what we are doing for our employees who were affected from the fires, I was getting more and more emotional. The more he spoke about it, the more emotional I was getting, because I don't know any other organization that takes care of its people in an emergency and a disaster like we do at LAUSD. And then I was listening some more about how we're protecting for the future our building codes, our changes in construction, and all we can do for the kids. So, of course, thank you. Thank you to our firefighters, our police, first emergency responders. I mean, without you, we could not be here today. But let me talk just for a second about our kids, because I'm a school-based person and I know our kids. And when I go to the schools, I see that they need routines. So teachers and principals and cafeteria staff and office staff, you're the ones who make the kids feel safe at school. I have visited the schools. The kids are happy, they're resilient, because they need routines. And it's up to us to make sure that our kids are safe in school and have those routines that make them welcome back to school. So thank you, Mr. Carvalho. Thank you.
All right, School Board Member Charlotte Newbill.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to share. As mentioned, LAUSD has stood behind and for our students and families. And in spite of such crisis, it is great to see so many come together. It is one to be able to appreciate those that have contributed and donated to our foundation to be able to support our families and communities closest to us that go out and support our children every day. And so I want to say thank you to those donors and supporters that were able to contribute in that way, enable us to be able to grant funds to our families directly. And with all the situations that are going on, we know that LA Unified will continue to stand and support our students, support our staff and community. And I am proud to be here as a board member to do the same. And as we mentioned, we'll continue to give you updates as things continue to unfold and continue to keep you apprised of the things that are happening here in LA Unified. So thank you again to all those that have supported us and will continue. And we continue to support our students and continue, as they said, the resiliency that our students have. We will share the same here at this board. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much. Board Member Nick Melvoin.
Good morning, and thank you, Superintendent, for your leadership and the urgency with which you've addressed this crisis that affects all of LA Unified, but in particular my district and the communities of the Palisades. The superintendent and I were in the Palisades on Wednesday morning when schools were quite literally still smoldering, but to check the damage, to see what we could do to protect the schools that were there, and also already start the process of rebuilding and working on short, medium, and long-term solutions. My heart goes out to all of those who are affected by these fires, whether you lost your home or your school or your way of life. And LA Unified has been operating with some of our core principles: flexibility, grace, compassion, and a willingness to get to yes. And that has been the operating assumption of LA Unified these last few weeks. How do we get to yes for families, for educators who need government to be responsive to their needs? And it's that operating ethos that enabled us within a week to move 2 entire elementary schools, 700 students, kids with their teachers and their principal, to nearby schools, so that within 7 days, those students were back physically in school with their community to heal. It's that operating assumption that enabled us to clean every school in LA Unified, replace filters with MERV 13 filters, air purifiers, industrial hygienist sign-offs, working with outside experts. And I'm so grateful to our Office of Environmental Health and Safety, our facilities team, our Chief Medical Officer. You know, even at a time when there is no federal, state, or regional standard for air quality in a crisis like this, as the superintendent said. LA Unified is not waiting for guidance. We are doing what we need to keep kids and communities safe. We are doing those deep cleans. We are doing that air quality monitoring. And we're not, again, waiting for the state. We're bringing the state along with us and saying we need a new standard to address these crises, knowing the climate realities of the future. It's that operating assumption of getting to yes that enabled the superintendent to make that announcement, which is that we're investing close to $1 billion to rebuild these schools as soon as possible. It's that operating assumption that enabled us to work in lockstep with Palisades Charter High School. I'm grateful for their executive director, Dr. Pamela McGee, who's here, and the superintendent who's worked in lockstep and has really proven that we are an all-kids, all-community district. And even though that campus, you know, the majority of those buildings may physically still be there, the campus is 100% impacted, and students aren't going to be able to be there for a few months. And we know that these seniors were freshmen during COVID. And so while the school worked quickly to get them in a virtual instructional program, we're working closely with the school to get them back in person in temporary locations. And I know the school will be making announcements as soon as later this week about where kids will be and when they'll be back there. But we are doing all we can to get Pali High, an iconic school, one of the largest schools in LA Unified, close to 3,000 kids back as soon as possible. Last thing I want to say is I know, and I know it as a representative of the Palisades, but also as a resident of the city and as a lifelong Angelino, that there is a lot of frustration and disappointment and a real crisis of confidence and of credibility of whether government can meet the moment at this time. And I want to say that LA Unified and the folks standing behind me, our board leadership, our superintendent, will meet this moment. We will meet this moment. We will invest. We will say yes. We will, those deadlines that the superintendent said about rebuilding, we won't make those deadlines. We will exceed those deadlines. And we will prove at this time that this is a school district that is here for our constituents, that are here for our kids and their teachers and their families. And just as in the crises of the past few years, whether that was the pandemic or the cruelty of this administration, our schools will be places, beacons of hope, and places where our kids and our teachers will lead us forward. So thank you, Superintendent, and thanks to the leadership of this entire district for meeting this moment. And in the weeks, months, and years ahead, we will rebuild. And my commitment to the constituents of the Palisades is we will be back, Pali strong, better than ever. Thank you.
Two quick points. When I talked about better monitoring systems, so the dramatic expansion of outdoor air quality sensors, we currently have 200 of them. They produce valuable information, but that information stops at air quality indices. Talking about particulate matter, what we are envisioning, and we already began the research, are sensors that not only identify particulate matter parts per million, noxious gases, fumes, ash, but also meteorological conditions within the community. And we will, for the first time, have absolute eyes on the entire jurisdiction of Los Angeles Unified. That system needs to be utilized beyond our school system. It needs to be utilized by city and county officials for us to, as a community, have a fully integrated technological system driven by science that better informs those decision makers regarding what must be done in advance of an event, management during the event, and then the appropriate response post-event. We can do this. We will make the necessary investments. We already began conversations. In fact, last night I spoke with County Chair Catherine Barger about a new era of collaboration to ensure, and I did the same with Mayor Bass, to ensure that the school districts not making decisions that are inconsistent with decisions made by the city or the county. That together we're making decisions based on the same data, the same interpretation, hoping for the same benefit of protection for our staffs. We have not done this alone, and I believe there is a slide depicting the dozens of partners that have supported our efforts. And we could not be more proud, in fact, that the Dodgers, Disney, Baby to Baby, UDT, so many different entities have come in, have provided support to our foundation, have allowed us to raise the necessary funding to provide those grants to our workforce and the support to our families based on surveys of need within our community. I want to make a point. There are a lot of individuals who never lived in the Palisades, but today don't have a job because of what happened in the Palisades. Through our foundation, as parents of our children, we will support them. The person who cut the yard in the Palisades, the person who made the deliveries, the person who now has nowhere to work is our concern as well, for they are the parents of our children. We want to be the best we can for those in the highest need in our community currently. Unas palabras en español. Hoy estamos haciendo un anuncio de una inversión multibillonaria en nuestro sistema escolar, principalmente en nuestros planteles escolares, mejorando las condiciones físicas de nuestras escuelas, con sistemas de aire acondicionado, con sistemas de mejoramiento de los productos que usamos. También estamos garantizando la reconstrucción de las 3 escuelas impactadas y destruidas por los incendios en Palisades. Estamos hablando específicamente de Palisades High, Palisades Primaria y Marqués Primaria. Lo estamos haciendo de una forma muy rápida, hablando y negociando los procesos con entidades estatales y federales para reducir el tiempo necesario para reconstruir estas escuelas. También estamos anunciando sistemas financieros de apoyo a nuestros empleados, empezando con los 340 empleados que fueran evacuados. Empezamos con un pagamento de $500 para cada uno, aumentamos los pagamentos hasta $1,000, y para las personas que perdieran sus hogares, unas becas de $5,000 para aliviar y apoyar el proceso de reconstrucción y normalización en sus vidas. También hemos decidido hacer una inversión de $725 millones para la reconstrucción de las 3 escuelas impactadas por los incendios. Decidimos también enfocar nuestra atención en mejoramientos en todos los planteles escolares en nuestra comunidad para llegar a un punto de resistencia contra los elementos atmosféricos aquí en nuestra comunidad. Y es por eso que estamos haciendo una inversión de $700 millones para crear espacios verdes en nuestros planteles escolares. Una inversión de $122 millones para crear paneles de energía solar en nuestras escuelas. Una inversión de $550 millones para mejoramientos de nuestros planteles escolares, para una mejor preparación cuando existen desastres que pueden impactar a nuestra comunidad. Nuestros esfuerzos han beneficiado de un apoyo tremendo del sector privado, principalmente entidades como nuestros queridos Dodgers, Disney, Amazon, muchas fundaciones, muchas entidades privadas y no privadas. Nos sentimos muy agradecidos por las contribuciones hechas por estas entidades. Y por último, quiero celebrar el aprovechamiento académico demostrado por nuestras escuelas. Ayer, el Estado de California anunció que el número de escuelas de bajo rendimiento aquí en nuestra comunidad disminuyó por un 72% comparado a un 60% a nivel estatal. Eso significa que el nivel de mejoramiento aquí en nuestra comunidad es más fuerte que el nivel de mejoramiento, la tasa de mejoramiento a nivel estatal. Y por último, quiero asegurar a nuestra fuerza laboral, a nuestros niños y a nuestras familias que nuestras escuelas son espacios seguros. Tenemos un deber profesional y moral de proteger a nuestros estudiantes y lo vamos a cumplir. Nuestras escuelas son lugares seguros. Entidades federales no tienen la autoridad de tomar cualquier acción de inmigración dentro de nuestros planteles escolares. Me siento muy agradecido al coraje, a la dirección, a la visión de nuestra Junta Escolar, que ha sido un líder a nivel nacional, tomando las medidas de precaución y protección necesarias para garantizar un ambiente escolar seguro para nuestros estudiantes y para nuestra fuerza laboral. All right, as I told you, a lot to cover. Any questions?
Hi, good morning, Superintendent. Thank you for having us here. Voy a hacer la pregunta en español. Referente a lo que pasó ayer, un día sin inmigrantes, muchos estudiantes no se presentaron a las clases de un 86% a un 66%. ¿Cómo impacta esto económicamente los programas del distrito? Gracias.
Bueno, la verdad que observamos una reducción de más de 20% la asistencia diaria, debido sin duda a los protestos y a una fuerza comunitaria contra la política de inmigración, pero también quizás debido a un temor que existe en nuestra comunidad. El peor impacto es al nivel de aprendizaje. Nosotros no tenemos la habilidad de enseñar al niño ausente. Segundo, nuestros planteles escolares son lugares de nutrición. Muchas de nuestras familias requieren la nutrición que nosotros ofrecemos gratis en nuestras escuelas. Es también el lugar donde proveemos ayuda médica, salud mental, salud física. Entonces, cuando los niños se quedan en sus casas, están perdiendo mucho. Y claro, también existe la posibilidad que debido a una reducción de la asistencia diaria, eso tendrá un impacto a nivel del presupuesto que es garantizado en nuestro sistema escolar. Pero esa no es nuestra prioridad. Nuestra prioridad es el bienestar, la oportunidad de educación, nutrición y salud para nuestros estudiantes. Obviously, I mean, we're constantly monitoring. We're very concerned. Any minute that students are not in school is a minute lost the educational opportunity. Kids who, out of fear of immigration action, stay home, they're deprived of their education. And these are the students often that can ill afford to be out of school. They're English language learners facing a lot of challenge. But schools are also the places where kids get nutrition. They're the places where they get the social, emotional, and mental health support. So keeping them home is not the answer. For those who are protesting, and they have a right to protest, we try to ensure that the protest takes place within the school facilities. They can go on to the athletic fields, speak their mind, voice their position without putting themselves at risk, and the support of our entire community of Los Angeles Unified.
Superintendent Michelle Vaz with NBC4. Can you reiterate the game plan for opening the schools and for rebuilding? Sorry, I missed that. You want to have portables on all 3 properties by 2025, and then explain how you want this done quickly again?
Sure. I'll do so, but then I'd like to introduce Christina Tokes, who's our Chief Facilities Leader, for any point that I may not eloquently make. So through our up to $725 million commitment this year, we believe that we can stage a number of actions, beginning with the first important action to be completed by May. If, in fact, we are able to achieve all debris removal, and I can say that we have been prioritized as schools within LA for debris removal, and we appreciate the governor's action in this regard. If, in fact, the debris removal is achieved by May, and soil contamination tests, air quality tests, all of the environmental concerns are addressed by May, then we can begin an expedited process that would lead to the deployment of bungalows, temporary classrooms onto those sites in areas of the property that we will not be building on, allowing us to, on a parallel track, begin the process of actually rebuilding the school. In the case of Palisades Elementary and Palisades High, there are buildings that survived the fire. This process will allow us also to decontaminate, to clean, to run the appropriate tests, and if everything comes in positive, those facilities could be occupied for the beginning of the 25-26 school year. That's August. We believe it is doable. However, we will not be able to do it if we do it as business as usual in the state of California. So all the waivers, the promises of expedited process approval need to come in for us to be able to live up to this timeline. It is doable. Christina, anything?
Good morning. I'm Christina Tokes, the Chief Facilities Executive. Just to add to what the superintendent said is we're currently doing assessments of the buildings, the infrastructure, and the hazardous conditions on those sites. We will have those completed by May, so we will be able to determine whether we can open those schools by August of this year. We also know that there's a significant community assessment that needs to be done as well, to the infrastructure, to the utilities, to the conditions of the surrounding properties. We'll be working with our respective agencies to make sure that we're working in tandem and parallel so that we can open the school together. Thank you.
And Christina discussed community, very, very important. The plans that we have drafted and our intention to normalize conditions as soon as possible are not going to short-circuit or curtail any of the necessary environmental tests, soil contamination tests, and the like. In addition to that, before we formalize the plans or timelines, we will engage the community through community town hall meetings to ensure the community is apprised of our plans, and actually the community becomes a contributor to the plans that are being contemplated. The point we're making is we can do this in an expedited format to the extent our partners react appropriately to it. We have allocated the necessary funding, and obviously the biggest issue here is debris removal and the condition of the environment. We will not sacrifice a single dollar in vain in the pursuit of appropriate conditions to rebuild on site.
Superintendent Mariana Dale from LAUSD. You mentioned the goal is to expend $2.2 billion of funding to fix roofs, HVAC systems, other facility improvements. We knew there was an enormous need in the district. That's why you asked voters to pass the bond in the first place. How is what you presented today different than what was already in the works? Sure, good question. So, three main differences. Number one, four main differences. Number one, the $725 million investment into the rebuilding of 3 schools. That was not envisioned when the voters approved this bond. Secondly, and in speaking with Christina, whom you just heard from, had we not passed this bond referendum, probably to rebuild these schools, we would have had to take the funds from other projected investments. Secondly, the $550 million investment into resilience projects. Those go above and beyond what was anticipated under the previous bond. So when we talk about the massive expansion of the outdoor sensors into every single school, that was not envisioned. When we talk about an accelerated seismic resilience investment, that was not envisioned. So our above and beyond investments. The integrated system that I spoke about, specific to air quality, environmental, and atmospheric conditions, and the integrated nature of that system, that was not envisioned under the previous bond investment discussion. And certainly the $700 million in greening projects to be started this year, 2025, that was not part of the vision when we approved the bond measure US. So these are new investments above and beyond what was contemplated, or emergency investments, as is the case with the $725 million tab for the rebuilding of these 3 schools. And how does the district ensure that these projects will go to the campuses that have the highest?
Very good question. And actually, we spent quite a bit of time going back to about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, in developing a system that allowed us to rank the schools on a basis of highest need for heat reduction strategies. So removal of asphalt, shading projects, et cetera, looking at not only temperature indices within school, the percentage of the geography of the school that was covered with asphalt, the lack of green, but also taking into account the neighborhood conditions, right? Are there green facilities? Is there a lot of asphalt surrounding those schools? That allowed us actually to develop a list, rank-ordered list of schools for the investment for heat reduction. We're doing the same thing now, taking into account environmental conditions, pollution, not only heat index, but also the propensity during fires for the dislocation and movement of clouds of smoke, ash into certain areas. LA is not flat land. You have canyons, you have mountains, you have different areas of the community, and simply traveling a quarter of a mile may take you from an area where the air quality may be okay to an area where the air quality is terrible. We saw that in the aftermath of the fires. So this enhanced list, rank order, which already exists, but we're going to perfect it further, taking into account additional elements. And by the way, we are tasking a number of technicians, scientists, and other individuals with the responsibility of analyzing the best-in-class products, but also advising us in collaboration with the city and the county on the best way forward in terms of creating this integrated system. This task force will be up and running very, very soon to address these issues we're discussing. Part of the task force responsibility will actually be to review that rank-ordered list based on conditions in and surrounding schools in our district.
Hi, Superintendent Macy Jenkins, NBC4. I've got two questions. The first is, you talked about debris removal by May. Do you mean debris removal assessment or actually removing from the campuses? And then a follow-up to something that you said about the state of California and working with them to be able to meet that deadline. What did you mean? Is there any kind of blockade? Is there red tape that you need, something you need the state to do to help you on that timeline?
Yeah. So on the first question, it's not an either or, it's a both and. It's both the removal of the debris and inspection. In fact, and I know some in the community have asked for, go and do soil tests right now. It doesn't make sense to do any soil testing right now until such time as the debris is removed. But the end of phase 0, because phase 1 is the actual architectural work, engineering work, and building and construction, that phase 0 envisions that by May, all debris would have been removed and the appropriate soil inspections would have been conducted. Do you want to add anything to this, Christina? Okay. As to the question specific to our state and federal partners, we heard a good game plan, which is we're going to do all we can to reduce the timelines of approval, state approval, inspections, and now we're going to hold folks to that commitment. If in fact that is the desire, we're ready to go. And I hope that that is what's coming across loudly and clearly here today, is that we have a plan, we have the resources, we have staged the implementation of this plan at a multitude of levels. We now need the state and the federal government to react accordingly. Federal government, actually live up to our timeline of removing the debris. It's not the state that's going to do it. It's a federal action. The state has significant authority over the approval of construction projects. They need to expedite the approval of those. They need to approve our waivers, not only specific to construction, but also other waivers dealing with the tenants, considering what we just heard, or even perhaps at some point assessment requirements. So we dealt with the crisis. Let's not allow some degree of complacency to now set in. This is the time to not only draft the plan, execute the plan, and hold those who actually hold the keys to an accelerated engine of approval to do so. All done? All right. Thank you very much, everyone.